morning and welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. I got a lot to cover this morning, so let's get right to it, shall we? It is projected that Republicans will take control of the House. We don't know by how many votes yet, but it won't be very many. And with President Trump picking some of the Republican representatives for his administration, that margin may become even narrower. And of course, there's a lot of concern about that. I mentioned that yesterday about exactly where that is going to leave the House margin, Republican control of the House, with Representative Elise Stefanik from New York being picked as ambassador to the United Nations. And Representative Mike Waltz of Florida being picked for National Security Advisor. There's some concern that that's two picked off in a very narrow margin. I'm not the president. I am not president-elect, and so what do I know? But I just hope that he stops there and doesn't narrow the margin for Republicans anymore, and really end up undermining his own ability to get things done, because the Democrats are able to pick off some votes who are from moderate or even maybe some bluish states who feel like they've got to be shall we say, adversaries in some cases to Donald Trump in order to keep their seats. So, of course, maybe, just maybe, it would work the other way as well. And some Democrats who are from more reddish states and feel that they've got a very slim margin of victory might go along with Trump. So it cuts both ways. But the point is, we certainly don't want him to narrow the margin any more than it already is, so that Republicans can really get some things done. So that's good news, though. Republicans are going to take the House. The final tally is not in yet, but I think at last count, I think they were up to 216, if I'm not mistaken. They needed 218, and I think two more have been called. I think one in New York. In fact, maybe a couple in New York, actually, have been called. So at any rate, I won't get into the details on that, the minutiae on that, because we'll soon know what the final outcome is, and no need wasting time speculating about, well, which seats are going to come in, which seats are not, and all of that. I'll tell you what is worth mentioning: how long it's taking these people to count votes in a congressional district. What? Why in the world is it taking that long? Something wrong with that picture. I mean, this is Wednesday. We are now 8 days past the election, and we've got some elections that have still not been decided because all the votes have not been counted. That should not be. We should be able to wrap this up on the night of the election or early morning the day after. We shouldn't be waiting 8 days or 9 days or 10 days, or some of these maybe take longer. They're talking about some of these maybe not even in until just before Thanksgiving. I mean, that's ludicrous. So there's that. The left is melting down. I mean, really, I've said this before. These people really do need treatment. They really do. They have some serious psychological and emotional problems. A couple of them, Whoopi Goldberg included, have suggested boycotting your family's Thanksgiving if there are people in your family who voted for Trump. I mean, literally, don't go to Thanksgiving dinner if there's somebody there who's voted for Trump. Don't have any family fellowship with those people, because they're bad people. I guess they're Nazis. These people are delusional. Women are stockpiling abortion pills. They're saying liberal men ought to get vasectomies. You all heard they're recommending women cut their hair, cancel their marriage plans, And I won't go into some of the other more prurient suggestions that they have about withholding intimacy, which is not supposed to happen if you're not married anyway. But I guess even within marriage, withhold intimacy as some kind of protest to the fact that Trump has been elected. This stuff, well, here's what's going on. They are confirming for us that they are indeed crazy, that they're really mentally ill. They're off. Not to mention they're morally evil. In fact, I did an interview yesterday morning with, I think it's called American Sunrise, the American Sunrise Network, and they asked me, do I think David Brody was the host of the program, used to work for CBN, but they asked me, did I think this was a battle of good versus evil? Absolutely. That's what it was. In fact, that's what it continues to be. And you can tell from these suggestions, don't have Thanksgiving dinner with your family. Cut off your hair, and women get more pills so you can kill your unborn babies. I mean, and the thing is, stockpiling abortion pills, how many abortions do you intend to have? I mean, this stuff, folks, it's truly sick. And every one of those pills that they're stockpiling represents the murder of an unborn child. They ought to just call them murder pills. Here's another thing. I've got a number of things that I want to mention. I want to get into bullets we've dodged. And folks, this makes you angry enough to just want to dope slap somebody. Metaphorically speaking, of course. FEMA actually, under the guidance of their leadership, FEMA workers in North Carolina, where people's homes were literally wiped out, where people are homeless, they're lacking in food, they have no shelter, they're struggling to survive. But any property apparently that had a Trump sign on it, how that survived in the midst of the flood and the hurricane, I don't know anyway, but any property that had a Trump sign on it, they didn't even offer help. They skipped that house. And now here's the theory. Well, we found that the hostility was coming from people who had Trump signs, seemed to be hostile, and for safety's sake, we engage in avoidance. Now, what does that even mean? First of all, you are a government official charged with helping American citizens. If you're going to make that kind of allegation, you better give me times, dates, names, addresses where this happened, so you can prove to me that this is such a widespread pattern that for the safety of your employees, you told them, if you see any indicia of that's a Trump supporting house, don't go there. Don't offer help there. Let them starve. Let them go without food. Let them go without clothing. Let them go without water. Let them go without housing. Their problem. Even though you don't know that that's the response you're going to get, but you now have drawn the conclusion based upon what you claim were responses from other properties where people once lived, but they had Trump signs or indications that they were Trump supporters. The response you got justifies skipping all homes that had Trump signs. Well, one thing we know for sure, folks, nothing like that will ever happen in a Trump administration. I would oppose it. I believe the president would oppose it. You would oppose it. In other words, if there's a national tragedy, and please hear me well on this, because I am speaking to you directly from my own heart. See, this stuff transcends politics, or certainly ought to. There's a tragedy in a community, and maybe a number of people in that community support Kamala Harris. You're there to, as a FEMA representative, you're there to give aid. You're there to give support. You're there to help people get through this tragedy. And you say, well, you know what? Let's skip the houses with Harris signs because, those people are going to be hostile toward us, and we don't basically use that as an excuse to punish people whose political views you don't like. I'd fire anybody who did that. If I were president or if I were the head of FEMA, I'd fire anybody who did that. Or the head of Homeland Security, which FEMA comes under, you'd be fired in a heartbeat. Because I don't care whether those people agree with us or not. They are still our fellow citizens, and they deserve the same treatment that any other citizen is entitled to, period. But you see, as I always say, that's because you and I have a moral inclination and predisposition because of our Judeo-Christian worldview. You do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So we would never say, you know what, the people we don't agree with, let's just mistreat them. Let's deny them what they're entitled to as our fellow citizens, because after all, they deserve it, because they're wrong. And they may well be wrong. And of course, the people who oppose us are wrong. But that doesn't make mistreating them right, because it's not. But this is the way these people think. And they've got the nerve to accuse Donald Trump of somehow wanting to punish his enemies. And this is what they do all the time. They were colluding with big tech to censor people like me and others. They used the Justice Department. I mean, right now, for example, we've got people sitting in jail, little old ladies in some cases sitting in jail because they peacefully protested in front of a baby killing institution or entity or organization or whatever you want to call it. They call them abortion clinics. I call them baby killing factories. And because they peacefully protested, sang hymns, prayed the rosary, prayed and asked God to open the eyes of the people who were killing innocent human life, they're in federal prison right now for extended sentences, which in my view, if this is ever challenged before the Supreme Court, it's got to be struck down, because that law protecting, somehow giving special protection to these baby killing factories is unconstitutional, because it violates freedom of speech and freedom of assembly under the First Amendment. Freedom of religion as well. If you're going to engage in the business of killing unborn babies, you have to deal with the fact that people who don't agree with you are going to engage in protests. Now, I agree, they don't have the legal right to obstruct the entrance. They don't have the legal right to certainly to assault or harm anyone who they believe is committing these acts. They don't have the legal right to stop a woman who's trying to get into that clinic, wrong though she may be. She has the full right to go in unfettered by her fellow citizens. They can try to persuade her. They can give her literature. They can say, hey, can we talk to you before you go in? And if she wants to talk, that's fine. If she doesn't want to talk, she can go in. But to be out there singing and praying is somehow, it intimidates the people who want to kill unborn babies. I mean, get over it. Comes with the territory. I mean, I've had on a couple of occasions, thank God it's not a frequent thing, but I've had on a couple of occasions people protesting me when I was running for lieutenant governor. I had that happen. I went to preach at a church one time. There were some people standing outside with a sign against me. I don't want to deny those people that they were on private property and they had to get off private property. And that's right. When I was running, people would do it. But sometimes if we were holding a private event on private property or in a private neighborhood, they couldn't stand on somebody else's property and do that. They had to try to do that in public property. But look, I support their right to do that. I really do. I support their right to protest me, because that's America. And if you don't want to endure that, I mean, nobody enjoys it, but you don't want to endure it, don't run. Don't put yourself in the public eye, because that's what freedom entails. But you see, the left doesn't think that way. They think you and I are so wrong and they are so right that they should be able to censor us, silence us, incarcerate us, punish us in any way they can in order to stop us from expressing ourselves and exercising our First Amendment liberties. Donald Trump's going to put a stop to that. And as a matter of fact, he has promised that he is going to get all these people who have been wrongly incarcerated under this protect reproductive rights thing, whatever they call this abomination of a law, that he's going to release those people, pardon those people. And then my prayer is that there be a constitutional amendment. See, that's the only way we're going to deal with this. A constitutional amendment that declares personhood and humanity at conception. You have that, all this stuff goes away. Because frankly, then abortion goes away. And it ought to go away. Except in the rarest cases, it ought to go away. And as far as denying women their reproductive freedom, as they like to euphemistically call it, when it's not that, it's denying a baby the right to live, and really it's suppressing and destroying reproductive rights, not advancing them. But where there are those very, very rare cases where there's a choice between the life of the mother and the life of the baby, that's a prudential decision that mother has to make. She can take I don't think this is the doctor's decision, it's the mother's decision. She can certainly take the advice of her physician into account, but she needs to prayerfully determine what she's going to do. And I said, even in those cases, there have been situations where the medical community said, well, either you or the baby is going to die. And the mother said, well, then I want my baby to live. And both the mother and the baby end up living. We're not God. And these Planned Parenthood monsters who think they are God, and all these baby killing Frankensteins who think they are God, they're gonna get their comeuppance if they don't repent and stop. They're gonna meet God one day, and the blood of all those babies they killed, they're gonna be held to account for. They're gonna be held to account for all the blood they've shed of the innocent. Donald Trump's going to thank God we've got someone now who will be a champion for these unborn babies, and a champion for people's First Amendment right to protest the carnage, the killing, the murder, the genocide that is going on in our country every single day. Okay. Here's another one. And I have to admit, I'm shocked. I'm glad for him. I don't quite know what to make of it, though. Pete Hegseth has been nominated as Secretary of Defense. I say I'm shocked, not because I don't think Pete is a very, very bright and capable guy, and clearly a courageous guy. I mean, he served our country bravely and well. I first met Pete Hegseth before he was on Fox News. I met him when he was the CEO of Concerned Veterans of America. I don't know whether you all remember that. I don't know what happened to the organization. It may have folded after he left. But that's when I first met him. And then, of course, he went on to start appearing on Fox frequently, and then got, I guess, offered a regular position. So he's now what he was. I think that job is clearly over now. But he was on, Fox and Friends Weekend. But I guess what surprised me is that he chose someone with such youth. By the way, I'm glad he's not a Washington insider. But I am surprised he chose someone with such youth, and someone. I don't believe Pete actually. I mean, he served in the military currently, and by the way, served with commendations and awards for valor, and he's a combat veteran. But he didn't make a career of it. You know, he didn't stick with it to retire from the military. And I guess, people are going to raise some questions about, the level of experience that he has, the level of military experience that he has. But I think that this is the ultimate answer to all of that. So I was surprised, because I don't know how old Pete is. I mean, I assume he's maybe in his early to mid 40s, maybe. I guess. I don't know. He could be older than that, but a young looking guy. But yeah, I guess you just expect Secretary of Defense. You expect to see a whole lot more gray hair. But I think the key really is his ability to surround himself with good people, and his willingness to learn, to study, and to make wise decisions based on the best counsel available to him. I think that's really the key to leadership of one of these major agencies. I don't think there's any different than leading anything else, And I believe that Pete Hegseth is a man of faith, and I really believe that he will be praying and seeking God's face as the weight of this responsibility comes upon him, asking God to lead him and guide him and direct him. I'll tell you one thing, I don't think President Trump could have found another person more committed to the national security and the preservation of the safety and the liberty of the American people. I don't believe he could have found a single person in America who's more committed to that principle, including me. I think Pete Hegseth is totally committed to the safety and the security of the American people. He is not a warmonger. He is not one of these rabid hawks who's looking for a fight. But I think he understands the importance of American strength as a way of deterring the need to go to war. So, on balance, while I was shocked because of, like I said, Pete's apparent youth, I think it's a great choice. I think it'll shake things up in Washington a bit. So good for him, and congratulations to Pete Hegseth. And the left, of course, is already going crazy saying he's unqualified. I think he's entirely qualified to do the job, even though he's not the stereotypical appointment that one might expect. Let me mention, too, I'm not going to go through all these appointments that President Trump is making. They all seem to be good. And by the way, I am a couple of them I am particularly glad to see. I'm particularly glad to see that as Assistant Chief of Staff for Policy, Tom Homan, of course, for, praise God, for Mike Huckabee, friend of mine, Mike Huckabee for Ambassador to Israel. That's a great appointment. Who am I looking for? Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller. I'm really glad to see Stephen Miller back in the administration. I like Stephen Miller. I mean, he's been accused of all kinds of stuff. He's a racist. I think Stephen Miller is on point on immigration. And to tell you the truth, everything I've heard him expound on, I have agreed with him entirely on it. So I think bunch of great appointments. Like I said, I'm not going to take up your time and go through each one of them. I just highlighted a few that I feel are hit close to home for me. Pete Hegseth, because he's so young. Mike Huckabee, because I know him. Stephen Miller, because I don't know him except by reputation, what I heard of him when he was in the first Trump administration, and I'm glad to see him back. So I think things are shaping up quite well for this administration. Now, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about things that we avoided. I said God spoke to me when Donald Trump was almost assassinated and actually shot in the ear. And God spoke to me and said, in the same way that I moved Donald Trump to dodge the bullet, I'm going to allow America to dodge the bullet of Marxism and socialism and secularism and atheism and sexual deviancy and this cliff off of which the Democrat Party wants to lead this country. And God confirmed that I'd heard him accurately. And I'd predicted that Donald Trump was going to win weeks before. The final popular vote, I still don't think it's in yet. And it may be a little less than I predicted. I think I predicted 4 points. But he's already over 300 electoral votes. I predicted at least 291 to 318. And he's already broken 300. So not bad. not bad. But I have to tell you, the Lord showed me that Donald Trump was going to win. And I said that to my audience. I believe he's going to win. And of course, look, you don't have to be a prophet to see the way things were trending. But of course, there were always these outstanding issues, and it was so close that people were saying, but it's still a toss-up. But, nobody can say for sure which way it's going to go. But all the indices were pointing at a Donald Trump victory. And it's been a resounding victory. Here's what we now can look ahead to not have happen, because Donald Trump is going to be president of the United States again. Some of these old stories that I may have mentioned in the past, but I want to recall them for you so that you realize what's been at stake in this election. We found out, and this was reported, let's see, when was this reported? Back in April, that the administration was actually colluding with banks to get banks to monitor the account activities of initially anybody who they suspected was in Washington on January 6th. But then broaden that, of course, to include people whose activities might be a little suspect, like a conservative like me who's giving money to, giving money to the American Family Association, which has been dubbed by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group, or to the Family Research Council, or you name, or giving money to, donating to me, or accounts under the name of staying true to America's national destiny. That sounds like they might be some right-wing extremists. At least 13 banks were involved in this process. 13 very large, influential banks covering lots and lots of people were involved in this process of the Treasury Department using their Financial Crimes Enforcement Network to monitor account activities. Now, folks, this is about as unconstitutional as it gets. Because first of all, you can't do that without a warrant. You can't go through our bank accounts without a warrant. And that warrant has got to be based upon probable cause. You can't go on a fishing expedition through our accounts to see, well, did we identify anybody who we think may be an extremist? That's the kind of stuff you will not have to endure under a Trump administration. Thank God. Kamala Harris had been promising that there would be amnesty and that she would fast track illegals to citizenship. In other words, she would put the rubber stamp on the invasion and and folks, again, if I hear the number 11 million illegal immigrants one more time, again, you want to dope slap somebody. They've been using 11 million for 20 years, or at least a decade. 11 million. How can it still be 11 million when we've been flooded with them over the last 4 years? Some estimates are we got at least 10 million have come in the last 4 years. That would take us to 20 or 21 million. I mean, give me a break. And you're going to deport all 11 million illegal immigrants. I told you my estimate. I think we've got about 30 million illegal immigrants. Because look, we have the largest number of residents in the United States of America who are not born in our country, the largest percentage in the history of the nation. We've got about 50 million people here who were not born in the United States of America. Now, that's approaching, 12, 13%? That's a lot of folks. Maybe a little higher than that. Yeah, maybe a little higher. I haven't done the math, but yeah, maybe a little higher than that. And I'm telling you, most of those people are illegal aliens. I'm not calling them immigrants because they didn't migrate, they invaded. Are illegal aliens. She was going to give all of them amnesty. Now they're going to all be deported, or every one of them that we can find. Praise God. So that's a bullet we dodged. Okay. The Democrats wanted to pass a bill that would ban requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote. They wanted to pass a bill banning proof of citizenship, which once again tells you exactly where they're coming from and what they want. They want to be able to cheat. That's what they want. Well, obviously, we won't be having any of that. And I'm sure that if Donald Trump has anything to do it, we will have a bill that requires proof of citizenship the first time you register to vote. Now, an 18-year-old registering to vote shouldn't have any problem proving that they're an American citizen. And obviously, once you proved it one time, you shouldn't have to prove it again. I mean, maybe if you change residence or something, it might be necessary. But I registered to vote. How old was I when I first registered to vote? I don't think I registered to vote. I don't think I registered to vote when I was 18. But I know that I registered to vote, was registered to vote by the time I was 21, 22, somewhere in there. Because I remember voting. I remember going into the voting booth and being irritated by people passing out literature, thinking to myself, I know what I don't need anything else. By the time I arrive here, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I wasn't a Christian then, and I my attitude was, leave me alone. Obviously, I have a different approach now because I've been one of the people standing at those polls handing out literature, and I know what a difference it makes to have somebody smile and say thank you and treat you with some respect and some dignity. But yeah, I've been voting for a long time. I wouldn't have had any problem proving my citizenship and would have been happy to do so. But the Democrats don't want that. I wonder why. I told y'all yesterday, a woman called, well, actually, I may not have told you. I think I might have told my AFR audience. A woman called on my conference call at 12 noon yesterday, on Tuesday, 12 noon, said she worked the polls in Virginia, and there were many people who came to vote who couldn't even speak English. She said, and you're not allowed to ask them if they're citizens. You're not allowed to ask for any proof of citizenship, but you can't. She said, I cannot believe that they were citizens, because if you can't speak English, it means you haven't gone through the process of becoming naturalized, because you've got to be able to speak English to do that. You've got to understand enough English to do that. In fact, a friend of mine, preparing people for citizenship who are doing it the legal and proper way, is an English teacher who teaches people how, Spanish-speaking people primarily, I believe, how to speak English. So, but the Democrats don't want you to be able to prove citizenship, to have to prove citizenship, because they want people to vote. And in keeping with that, they also wanted to the Democrats wanted to pass legislation that would include illegal aliens in the apportionment of congressional seats. You understand how this works? The census counts the number of people in a given area in order to establish the size of a congressional seat. We have 435 seats in Congress, and those seats are divided up essentially evenly, state by state. And if you count illegal immigrants, what it would mean is you potentially could have more congressmen in a given state, because they have a whole lot more people, even though those people aren't citizens and can't vote. If you count them in the apportionment, you still get more congressional representatives, because those non-citizens are there. The Democrats wanted to make sure they're included. Republicans want to make sure they're not, and they should not be. We can count them for the census, but they should not be included in congressional apportionments, because they cannot vote and therefore they do not count. Not for that purpose. They count as human beings, but they don't count for purposes of the political operation of the United States of America. That's out. You know, Donald Trump's not going to put up with that nonsense. He's going to stop that if he can, so that they are not counted for purposes of our congressional districts, their sizes, and the number of representatives a state has. Again, thank God. I think I already mentioned that Donald Trump has promised to pardon these pro-lifers who have been arrested. There's one particular woman, Lauren Hardy. She got 5 years in prison. Lauren Handy, forgive me. She got 5 years in prison for protesting outside of a baby killing factory. This stupid law. She was convicted by a D.C. federal jury, of course, in D.C., along with other pro-life activists for violating this called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. Please. The Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. She was charged with conspiracy against rights, which carries a potential sentence of 11 years and a $350,000 fine. And prosecutors requested that she be sentenced to 6.5 years. I mean, these people, they really need to get a revelation. She had 9, by the way, co-defendants, and they were also sentenced. One, John Hinshaw, was sentenced to 21 months in federal prison. Another one, let's see, by the name of Jay Smith, was sentenced to 10 months in prison. And others are awaiting sentences. They've probably been sentenced by now because it's an old article that goes back a ways. But, I mean, this stuff is really crazy. Joan Bell got 11 years for peacefully protecting unborn babies. And she was completely nonviolent, no assault charges, nothing like that. But for what they saw as obstructing the entrance, and of course, I'm not sure what that means, how an old lady can really obstruct the entrance when, you know, an old lady can simply be moved out of the way, quite simply. She got 11 years in prison. So this stuff has got to stop. And Donald Trump will put a stop to it. So that's something that we won't have to put up with going forward. Did you all know that Joe Biden appointed a guy named Mar Bitar as his National Security Council coordinator for intelligence and defense policy? And the guy prior to this, was a pro-Palestinian activist and leader of Students for Justice in Palestine, and was involved in some of these very violent upheavals that happened in and around Israel. And that's who Biden chose for his White House coordinator for intelligence and defense policy. Well, he's gone, and people like him will be gone. Praise God. I mean, these are the bullets, folks, that we're dodging because Donald Trump is now president-elect, soon to be president of the United States of America. Did you know that the International Crime Commission of the UNN was seeking warrants against Israel for crimes against the Palestinians in Gaza? Donald Trump had sanctioned them and basically said, you have no jurisdiction in America to issue anything, and we will not accept anything. Biden undid that executive order, and now they're coming after Israel and coming after America again because Biden opened the way. I mean, look, I haven't even talked about Iran yet. $200 billion that we made possible for Iran to have so that they could hurt us and hurt Israel. And of course, spread terror around the world. I mean, what is wrong with these people? Well, thank God it won't be wrong anymore because they're on their way out. Donald Trump's coming in and all the madness is going to stop. Iran is at the brink of having a nuclear weapon. I really believe that Donald Trump put a stop to that. I really believe that. They may put a stop to it themselves because they don't want the consequences of becoming a nuclear threat to the United States of America and to Israel. Joe Biden gave amnesty to a lot of DACA people. I think Donald Trump will undo that, and he should undo that. I have always resented this idea of calling people dreamers simply because their parents had entered our country illegally. Now, again, I've said, I'm not saying punish the child or mistreat the child or for that matter, necessarily even deport the child. I'm not jumping to those conclusions. But one thing you don't do, you don't give a child special privileges because the parent has broken the law. And if you're going to deport the parent, you deport the children with the parent. You don't give this stuff, I've said that logic would say when somebody commits a crime in America and you want to put the parent in prison, you can't do that if you put the person in prison. You can't do that if the person is a parent because you're punishing the child as well. No, we're not. We're not punishing the child. The parents punish the child when they decided to break the law. That's on the parents, not on us. But what about the American dream? What about Americans dreaming? What about American children and their dreams for the future? What we've seen is all this invasion gets in the way of children fulfilling the American dream. You want to give these people free this and free that, free college tuition and free medical care. And all that does is crowd out American citizens from getting things that they need and are entitled to. So that's going to be out. I trust that we will never hear the words, any words of praise for DACA coming out of President Trump's mouth because it's wrong. It's wrong. I think it was Barack Obama who came with this dreamers nonsense. He has no dream for the American people, but he certainly got a dream for illegal aliens because their dream is to give the Democrats absolute power and hegemony in the United States of America in toto. That's their real dream. And these illegal aliens are nothing but pawns in that regard. And too bad that their parents broke the law and brought them here illegally. But you don't get rewarded for it. I don't want to punish you. I don't want to mistreat you over it. But you don't get rewarded for it either. And when the parents are deported, the child goes with them. And children say, but this is all I've known. Well, that's not our fault. That's not our fault. That's your parents' fault. You resolve that with them. Or you go, I'll tell you what I would do as a child. I would say to children, because you didn't come illegally on your own, unlike my policy that I've suggested, which is if you come into our country illegally, you are forever banned from ever becoming an American citizen. Forever. I would make an exception for children. So if your parents brought you here, you go back to your home country with your parents. If you decide as an adult you want to apply for American citizenship and you want to come the right way, you will not be banned. But your parents will, because they violated the law to come here. But I would not attribute that to a minor child who had no say in the matter. So sure. So you see what I'm saying? I absolutely extend to them some compassion because they didn't make the decision and they didn't intentionally violate our law. They were simply the victim of their parents' illegality. But you're not going to, I can't reward you because your parents broke the law either. I can give you a little bit of a break that your parents won't get because they broke the law. So you can become an American citizen if you come the right way. I have no problem with that. But you can dream the American dream when you get here illegally, legally. And until then, as a result of your parents' actions, you are an interloper. Child sex trafficking under the Harris and Biden administrations tripled. Donald Trump's going to put a stop to that. I mean, more children being caught up in the sex trade, more children being enslaved, more children being plied with drugs in order to make them pliable and malleable and easily manipulated to do all the sick things that these cartels use these children for doing. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were responsible for that. Donald Trump will put a stop to it. All of our job growth, 1.2 million fewer Americans are in the workforce than when Biden started because illegal aliens have taken those jobs. And according to Pew, 30 million non-citizens are working in the United States of America. 30 million. You know, the American people need jobs. We seem to have forgotten that. So, praise God. There's a lot of stuff, folks, that we're not going to have to deal with any longer, that we've had to endure. I didn't even talk about inflation coming down. I believe Donald Trump will take such dramatic and decisive action on energy that we're going to see prices immediately begin to drop. And you've already seen the stock market has reacted. People are just, there's a sense of hope that things are going to come back to a state of normalcy, as opposed to the madness of this Biden-Harris administration. So I'm excited. I'm encouraged. I hope you are too. I think most of these appointments are unquestionable. In fact, I don't think any appointment that Donald Trump has made is questionable. I think all these are competent people. We'll see how they actually perform in the job, because you all know that this can be a revolving door. Somebody may get in there, and in 1 or 2 years he'll realize, great person, very capable, but not the right fit for this. And that person will move on, and someone else will take on that role. But based upon what we're seeing right now, he's making wise choices. I'll tell you one thing I'll end with. When I was running for president, I said that if I got elected president, I would appoint Matt Staver as my attorney general. I haven't heard Matt Staver's name come up, but I think Matt Staver has been a champion for our First Amendment liberties. And I really believe that for the position of attorney general, which he has not named yet, we need a champion for religious liberty, a champion for freedom of speech, a champion for freedom of assembly, a champion who's going to defend the rights of Americans and of Christians to speak our minds, to follow our religious convictions, and to do things like protests outside of a baby killing a factory without fear of being put in federal prison for exercising our First Amendment liberties. We need an attorney general who's going to be a champion for the American people, a champion, by the way, for Christians too, even in the corporate world, where they're not punished because they go to a particular church or have a particular worldview, and businesses are not closed down because they won't do a so-called gay wedding cake or a transition cake or whatever they want to call this garbage that they want done, and that they can't have their businesses closed down because they won't go take pictures at a homosexual confab or wedding or whatever they want to call the thing. It's not really a wedding. It's an abomination. But you can't force an American citizen to be a part of something that their godly convictions prohibit them from involvement in. And we need an attorney general who will send the signal if you start punishing and discriminating against people on the basis of their sincerely held religious principles, we will come after you because you are discriminating. You are violating the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and you're violating the First Amendment rights of the American people. I nominate Matt Staver. I think he'd be perfect for the job. Matt Staver for Attorney General. Tell your congressman, tell your senator, your Republican congressman or senator, hey, why does the president consider Matt Staver as Attorney General? I think he'd make an outstanding Attorney General. And he's been involved in some of the most important cases of the last 2 decades, fighting for our religious liberty, fighting for our freedom of speech. God bless him. Matt Staver represented Jack Phillips, because he's the one who they wanted to. I think they were trying to get him to bake the so-called gay wedding cake, and then later on came back and sued him again, trying to make him make some kind of transition deal, and he wouldn't do either one. Because they want to punish us. They want to silence us. They want to persecute us. They want to censor us. And we need an attorney general who's going to defend our right to say what we believe under the First Amendment liberties given to us by Almighty God, not by the Constitution, but secured for us by the Constitution of the United States. Well, God bless everybody. That's going to do it for today. I'll tell you what, there's a whole lot of stuff that we've dodged, and we thank God for it. It's a new day, and there's a new sheriff in town. And the sun is rising in America now. So praise God. I'm elated by it. I know you are too. Listen, I will be back with you again tomorrow for more commentary and discussion. In the meantime, you know what to do. Stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up. Because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side. God bless everybody.